For decades, Starbucks has been considered to be one of the most successful retail stories in business history. The first store was opened in 1971, but they didn't really start growing until the 1990s. Throughout the 2000s and 2010s, growth was explosive, with their global store count reaching almost 40,000 by the early 2020s. Many consider Starbucks' coffee to be overpriced. A basic cup of coffee at Starbucks can cost $3 to $4 in the US. You can get a coffee at McDonald's for just $1. The reason so many people are willing to pay premium prices for Starbucks coffee is twofold. Firstly, they offer a wide variety of drink options, including the ability to heavily customize your order. But the main attraction of Starbucks is its atmosphere. The stores have free Wi-Fi and comfortable furniture. You can go to Starbucks, buy a cup of coffee, and sit there for hours doing your work, studying, or just reading a book. Starbucks calls this concept the third place. You're not at home, but it doesn't feel like you're in a restaurant either. It's something in between. It's a place where you can buy coffee and various snacks, but also feel comfortable to linger around for hours. For decades, the brand looked unstoppable, becoming ubiquitous across the US and expanding rapidly across the globe. But in recent years, the situation has taken a turn for the worse. It's not an exaggeration to say the company is in crisis. In their home market of North America, comparable sales have declined 2 years in a row. On top of that, thousands of their baristas are threatening to strike. Their second largest market is China, where their market share is imploding. After decades of growth, Starbucks' share price peaked at $126 in 2021. Since then, it has lost more than a third of its value, even as the S&P 500 has experienced a massive bull market. As profits tumble, the company is now on its fourth CEO in the past 3 years. In this video, we will look at how Starbucks lost its way, and what their strategy is to turn things around. As of the end of Starbucks' fiscal year 2025, they had 40,576 stores worldwide, of which 21,325 are company-operated and 19,251 are licensed. So what's the difference between company-operated and licensed stores? A normal Starbucks store that is located in its own building is almost certainly company-operated. In a company-operated store, the baristas are directly employed by the Starbucks Corporation. Starbucks directly receives the revenue from the store and incurs all expenses related to maintaining and operating the store. Approximately 75% of revenue comes from beverages, while 25% comes from food. The licensed stores are almost all within larger buildings. For example, if you see a Starbucks in an airport, this is operated by the airport under license. They purchase raw ingredients and equipment from the Starbucks Corporation and pay a few percent of their revenue to Starbucks as a royalty. The store within a store Starbucks are also licensed. For example, most Targets have Starbucks inside of them. The baristas are actually Target employees wearing Starbucks uniforms. While almost half of Starbucks locations globally are licensed stores only represent 12% of the company's revenue. They only recognize revenue from the royalty fees as well as raw ingredient sales. While it's a small percentage of revenue, the margins for licensed stores are much higher as the Starbucks Corporation does not incur any of the store operating costs. Of the 40,500 Starbucks stores globally, 18,500 are located within North America. Starbucks defines North America as US and Canada. Mexico is included within the Latin America segment. Their second largest market is China, where they have 7,700 stores. Almost all the Chinese Starbucks stores are company-operated. In the rest of the world, they have 14,400 locations, of which 12,000 are licensed. Starbucks' two most important markets by far are North America and China, which combined represent 2/3 of their global store count. So we'll focus on these two geographies, starting with North America. In the early days, most Starbucks customers ordered hot coffee options. There are multiple different types of hot coffee you can get, but overall it's pretty simple. Starbucks has served iced coffee since the 1980s, but the popularity of cold drinks really started to take off when they launched the Frappuccino in 1995. The Frappuccino is an iced coffee drink which includes flavored syrup, whipped cream, and copious amounts of sugar. Frappuccinos have so much sugar and syrups in them that they are almost unrecognizable from plain coffee. This appeals to many customers who are not traditional coffee drinkers and would probably never drink bitter black coffee. Throughout the 2010s, Starbucks leaned into the success of the Frappuccino and started offering a larger and larger variety of cold drinks. Colorful and sweet beverages are especially popular with the younger generations. In November of 2022, then CEO Howard Schultz explained, quote, "Customer demand for customized, handcrafted Starbucks cold beverages is so strong that today, cold coffee beverages account for 76% of total beverage sales in our US company-operated stores." Unquote. The shift to customized cold beverages brought both challenges and opportunities. Let's say I come to Starbucks and order a venti caramel crunch frappuccino with 2 pumps white mocha, double blended, light on ice, add vanilla sweet cream cold foam, and substitute the milk with oat milk. That'll take a lot longer for the barista to make than just plain coffee with cream. But this increased complexity is well worthwhile. Consumers are willing to pay more for complicated drinks that can be heavily customized. Starbucks has always charged premium prices. In the beginning, this was due to the welcoming and comfortable atmosphere with free Wi-Fi, the so-called third place. The coffee itself was just coffee. The only reason you'd pay double the price for a Starbucks coffee is so you can lounge around in the store for a few hours. This greatly limits the number of customers you can serve. There are only so many seats in the store. If somebody walks by and sees that the store is almost full, they might not even come in. With the rise of highly customized cold beverages, this dynamic has changed significantly. For many people, the main attraction of Starbucks is no longer the third place. They just want the drink itself. To serve this new type of customer, Starbucks started adding drive-thrus to many of their stores. By the mid-2010s, the majority of new Starbucks stores in the US included drive-thrus. This trend accelerated massively during the pandemic. During the height of the pandemic, Starbucks had to close its stores for indoor dining, but they continued to operate their drive-thrus and in-store pickup. You had to order ahead with the Starbucks app. This forced millions of people to download the app for the first time, when they previously only made their orders in person. In the first quarter of 2023, Starbucks started disclosing the percentage of sales that come from mobile orders at US company-operated stores every quarter. Before that, they would sporadically mention this metric in earnings calls, so there is some missing data. We know that in 2018, 14% of sales came through the app. In fiscal year 2020, this rose to 18%. Starbucks has a weird fiscal year that ends in September, so the pandemic only began halfway through fiscal 2020. That's why the percentage for the full year wasn't that high. In 2021, the percentage increased to 26%. It reached 31% at the beginning of 2024 and has remained steady ever since. Starbucks encourages its customers to order online through the Starbucks app. When you pay through the Starbucks app, you get points which can go towards paying for future Starbucks orders. The increased use of mobile ordering and drive-thrus means that the sales of each store is no longer limited by seating capacity. People order online, come to pick up their drink, and walk out within minutes. Thus, a single store can serve a much larger number of customers per day. Starbucks has massively increased its store count in the US and globally over the past couple decades. The more stores you have, the greater will be your sales. Of course, more stores also means greater costs in operating these stores. And if you're not careful, the sales from new stores will partially cannibalize sales from nearby locations. That's why investors attach a lot of importance to a metric called comparable store sales growth. This represents the year-over-year change in sales for stores that have been open for at least a year. It is a measure of how existing stores are doing while stripping out the impact of new store openings. In fiscal 2019, North American comparable store sales increased by 5%. In 2020, sales decreased by 12%. This decline can be attributed to pandemic-related shutdowns. In 2021, sales rebounded strongly, rising 22%. Comparable sales continued to grow very strongly in 2022 and 2023, but then they started shrinking in 2024. If we turn the comparable store sales growth into an index, we can see how successful the mobile ordering strategy was. From 2018 through 2023, the revenue per Starbucks store in North America increased 36%. That's a huge increase. This growth can be partially attributed to increased traffic, but it's also due to price increases. From 2018 through 2023, the average transaction value at North American Starbucks stores increased 26%. This is mostly due to them raising prices. But to be fair, consumer price inflation was very high in general during this period. Howard Schultz has been CEO of Starbucks 3 different times, holding the position for 25 years in total. He is largely credited with building Starbucks into the global powerhouse that it is today. His last stint was from 2022 to 2023. In 2023, he finally retired for good. He was replaced by Laxman Narasimhan. Narasimhan previously worked as a consultant at McKinsey & Company, as well as a senior executive at Pepsi. When Narasimhan took over, he reviewed the numbers. He saw that transactions per store were going up even as they were raising prices slightly faster than inflation. The strategy of expensive, exotic, and heavily customizable cold drinks was working. The loyalty program and mobile ordering were extremely successful. Given how well things were going, the logical decision was to double down on the existing strategy. The higher customer throughput and more complicated drinks puts greater stress on baristas. The Starbucks app gives you points for every purchase you make. They also run various limited time promotions and discounts. Starbucks constantly experiments with the app, making adjustments in an attempt to galvanize more sales. This has made the app increasingly complicated. Oftentimes, baristas need to spend significant amounts of time helping customers understand how the app works. This has resulted in longer wait times. In 2019, 80% of customers were served within 5 minutes of placing their order. Almost no customer had to wait more than 15 minutes. By 2024, only 60% of customers were served within 5 minutes. About 10% of customers had to wait more than 15 minutes. Starbucks baristas started to grow frustrated by the increasingly stressful working conditions. In 2021, a group of Starbucks baristas created a labor union called Starbucks Workers United. At first, it was very small, but by 2024, it had grown to include over 10,000 members. They occasionally go on strike, demanding better pay and working conditions. In 2025, the union conducted a survey of its members. 91% of respondents reported that their stores were understaffed. 76% said they felt overwhelmed by the pace of work. These survey results should be taken with a large grain of salt. It was organized by the union and given to union members. Workers who are disgruntled are more likely to join the union, so their experiences are likely not representative of the average Starbucks worker. Nonetheless, it does appear that longer wait times and unhappy baristas are having a negative impact on the customer experience. In the second quarter of fiscal 2024, North American same-store sales declined for the first time since the pandemic, and they continue to be negative for the next 5 quarters. Starbucks tried to increase store throughput to maximize profits. In doing so, they abandoned what made them popular in the first place. Remember that Starbucks was originally conceived as the third place, a place where you can lounge about comfortably, studying or working while sipping an overpriced latte. Now the stores are overcrowded with people waiting to pick up their mobile orders or trying to figure out how the loyalty program works. While Starbucks is having problems in North America, their situation in China is far worse. China was supposed to be their big growth market. Throughout the 2010s and early 2020s, they invested billions of dollars to open up thousands of stores there. In fiscal 2020, comparable store sales declined by 17% in China. This was to be expected thanks to the pandemic. But after the pandemic ended, sales did not recover. In fact, they kept declining. By fiscal 2025, comparable store sales had declined 40% since 2019. This is a disaster, an implosion. So what happened? The main reason is competition from the homegrown Chinese brand Luckin Coffee. Luckin's shares used to be listed on the Nasdaq. You might remember they were delisted in 2020 after it was revealed that the company fraudulently inflated its reported revenue. While the company indeed committed fraud, it was nonetheless a real company, and continued to operate pretty much business as usual after it was delisted. Today, it has 26,000 stores globally, the vast majority of which are located in China. For comparison, Starbucks has 7,700 stores in China. While Starbucks is positioned as a premium brand in the US, this is even more so the case in China. In China, a large standard coffee costs about 30 RMB at Starbucks, which is equivalent to about $4.20. This is about the same price they charge in the US. This is kind of crazy when you consider that the general wage and price level in China is significantly cheaper than the US. Luckin is much cheaper. A basic coffee costs as little as 10 RMB, which is equivalent to about $1.40. While many have called Luckin the Starbucks of China, the two companies are quite different. Luckin doesn't pretend to be the third place. They cut costs by occupying as little real estate as possible. Their stores have very little and sometimes no seating space at all. The service is impersonal but efficient. You order online and pick up your drink. You don't have to say a word to the barista if you don't want to. They charge very cheap prices, but their throughput is so high and their overhead costs are so low that they can still turn a profit. Starbucks opened large stores that are expensive to maintain. They thought it was worthwhile because this allows them to charge premium prices. But just like in the US, Starbucks tried to have its cake and eat it too. They pushed mobile ordering and tried to increase store throughput. This just turned them into an overpriced version of Luckin Coffee. Starbucks' pricing in China peaked in 2020. Facing increasing competition from Luckin, they are forced to cut prices by 18%. But their prices are still much higher than Luckin, and they are continuing to lose market share. In 2024 and 2025, Starbucks' revenue increased marginally. But that's just because they opened a lot of new stores. Their sales per store were decreasing. Their operating profit peaked at $5.8 billion in fiscal 2023. It declined to $2.9 billion in fiscal 2025. This is their adjusted operating profit, which excludes restructuring and other non-recurring expenses. In August of 2024, Starbucks fired CEO Laxman Narasimhan just 18 months into his tenure. They replaced him with Brian Niccol, who previously served as CEO of Chipotle. Shortly after taking the job, Niccol unveiled his new strategy, which he called Back to Starbucks. He wants to take Starbucks back to its roots of being the third place. He wants customers to enjoy their experience, so they'll be willing to pay premium prices. They simplified their menu, removing some of the less popular customization options and drink types. This is meant to reduce complexity for the baristas, and thus reduce waiting times. They are also in the process of upgrading the furniture at their US locations to make it a more comfortable place to linger. Finally, he implemented a new training initiative for Starbucks workers, which he calls Green Apron Service. They're giving baristas in high-traffic stores more hours to reduce the understaffing problem. They've overhauled their order queuing system to prioritize in-person orders over mobile pickup orders. If someone orders mobile pickup, they're probably not going to arrive for at least 20 minutes anyway, so there's no point in completing that order first. In an attempt to bring back the friendly customer service Starbucks was known for, baristas are now required to write a brief positive message on each cup with a Sharpie. I went to a local Starbucks to confirm this. They indeed wrote "Enjoy" on my cup. While Brian Niccol came up with a plan to turn around the company's fortunes in the US, China is a different story. In November of 2025, Starbucks announced that it will sell a 60% stake in its China business to a Chinese private equity firm called Boyu Capital. Boyu will pay Starbucks approximately $2.4 billion for a stake in this new joint venture. Boyu will be responsible for operating Starbucks China. It's unclear what changes Boyu intends to implement. Having spun off the China business as a joint venture, this is at least one less thing for Starbucks HQ to worry about. It's too early to tell how successful Niccol's reforms will prove in the long run, but there are some tentative signs of improvement. In the quarter ended September of 2025, North America comparable store sales were flat. This comes after 6 consecutive quarters of declines, so at least for now, it looks like the bleeding has stopped. Alright guys, that wraps it up for this video. What do you think about Starbucks? Do you think that Brian Niccol's Back to Starbucks initiative will work? Let us know in the comments section below. As always, thank you so much for watching and we'll see you in the next one. Wall Street Millennial, signing out.